Hello listeners and viewers, welcome to The Mayor and I with me, Lindsay Khan, and Nick Buckley, MBE.
Number 35 today?
I was going to ask, number 35, gentle viewers, and today, what day is it today? 27th of August, I think.
Yeah.
It is 27th of August, 2024, and first of all, congratulations Nick, because you're up to now 12,000 viewers on YouTube.
Yep.
30-odd thousand on Twitter.
39, getting close to
39,000 on Twitter. And one of your videos, I think, has had nearly 100,000 views recently.
Yeah, that's one we did, talking about the Southport killer as a Welshman.
Yes.
And that's got something like 98,000 views at the moment, which is my highest watched video, and ours as well.
I think that the reason people are interested in that is because I think we were asking the question, why did they only show pictures of him as a child?
Yes.
I don't know if you remember, that's what it was about. So I think certainly what that demonstrates is that the things that we are talking about that you are pronouncing on, if I can say that, I think people are interested in hearing, and I'm not necessarily hearing in many other places.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, we're going to talk later about what the government are doing to clamp down on this kind of conversation, which is quite worrying. And I think you said that you've had a few messages from people actually warning you to be careful about what you're saying.
I'm getting, I'd say, 3-4 of them a day now.
Yeah. And I think that's quite worrying, really, because I don't think we're particularly talking about anything controversial, racist, provocative, incendiary or anything like that, but we'll maybe talk about that later. But I think that leads maybe neatly into the first thing I want to talk about today, which so what I'd like to do, and by the way, we've not spoken for a couple of weeks, so there's a lot's happened. So I've had to print quite a bit of stuff off because to catch up. But I want to read something to you first and ask if you recognise it, and then ask if you think it kind of applies to where we are now. So this is from a book, obviously. There will be no curiosity, no enjoyment of the process of life. All competing pleasures will be destroyed. But always, do not forget this, Winston, always there will be the intoxication of power, constantly increasing and constantly growing subtler. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Now, do you know what that quote is from?
Only because the quote mentioned the name Winston. So because of that, I know it's 1984.
Yes. And that phraseology there, so this is somebody in the power, this is, I can't remember the name of the character, the one who's a mentor to Winston Smith, who ultimately turns out to be betraying him, is a member of the government, basically. And he's describing how the government are achieving their power and what they intend to achieve. And that description there, is that, do you think, where we might be at the moment, or heading at the moment?
I think we're definitely heading along that line. We've known for a long time, I've known for a decade or two, that all our governments are slowly becoming more authoritarian. You look at the amount of laws they pass, what you can do, what you can't do, it's becoming more and more strict all the time. What Starmer's done is he's now just taken one step further and has shown us he wants to be an authoritarian. He's now coming across as adamant of this is the way it is. He's doing exactly what the Tories did, except he's now got rid of the pretense. And now there's no pretense now.
Yeah. He's not hiding the fact he wants to stamp down on any kind of dissent from the people against his policies, what they're trying to do. And he seems to be doubling down. I think he was on TV again today talking about division and racism and all that sort of stuff, not acknowledging the fact that people might not be happy. I think that was happening. I think what's quite interesting, going back to 1984, and it's a long time since I've read it. I didn't reread it, but I kind of went through it. It's quite interesting because 1984 there was no idea about
They are, but this isn't new. So Orwell based this dystopia on the Soviet Russia. He based it on that, and that's what was happening then, apart from the lack of technology. So people were spying on dissidents. Family members were paid to spy on them. When they started getting listening bugs, they were using that in East Germany. In East Germany, when the wall fell and they looked at the records, it was something like 25% of the population of East Germany were on the payroll of the police.
Wow. As
informers. So out of every 3 people you know, one of them was an informer. That's how deep it went in East Germany. So it's only with our increasing technology that we can do some of the spying now. But this has always gone on, and he foresaw the advancement in technology. He knew where this was going to go because he understood this ideology, this control.
And that's the way it's working now. So if you go on Twitter and you post something, or go on YouTube or post something, and you're saying things that certain members of the society, and we talk about 25% of East Germany being informers, but how much of this country is the public sector? What percentage of this population is employed by the public sector? But you have all these people trolling and looking through.
6 million people work for the public sector in the UK,
which is 10% of the population. So 10% of the population here work for the public sector. We have Twitter, Facebook, all these things. People are constantly looking at this, checking it. Not just people who are paid to do it. I'm talking about ordinary members of the community. And if they see something they don't like, they report it, don't they?
Yeah.
To the police, to whoever it might be, to Twitter themselves. So we have this surveillance happening almost on a voluntary basis at the moment.
And that's how you end up with a non-crime hate incident.
Yes.
Logged against your name on the police.
Yes.
So you don't even know you've got it.
Yeah.
You've broken no law. You've not been to court. You've not stood in front of a jury of your peers. No verdict has been announced. But yet on your police record is a non-crime hate incident that will come up on a DBS that will ruin your future career. And you might not even know that's on your record.
Yeah, yeah. And all these incidents following the Southport riots, in inverted commas, all these incidents where we now think 1,000 people have been arrested as a result of this. All these incidents, a lot of the people, and we're going to go through a list actually in a minute of what happened. All these people were presumably dobbed in by somebody who read their message and reported them to the police or something like that, I'm guessing.
Half of them who have been arrested was for online stuff, so they would have been reported, and the ones who were at the demonstrations and the ones who turned violent, that would have been CCTV and the police flooding social media and local newspapers saying, do you know these people?
Yeah. So people are now scared to write things on Facebook, they're scared to say things on YouTube, they're scared to even go and show any kind of solidarity with people who are unhappy with what's happening at the moment.
That's exactly what's happened. And if you'd have told me this several months ago, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah.
But I should have believed you, because we saw exactly the same thing during COVID. We saw how weak and cowardly most people are, and that was a lesson out of COVID. And we've learned the same lesson out of this, that people who are quite willing in good times to stand up and be anti-establishment and have an opinion, and I don't care what you think of me, The second it looks like there's a consequence of this, quite a lot of people now are going, I'm not saying anything anymore now. I'm scared. I've got a family, Nick. I can't afford to go to jail. It's like, well, don't you think those prison guards at Auschwitz had a family? Don't you think they had children they needed to feed? And a lot of the stuff I'm seeing online and messages coming to me and conversations I'm having, 50% of it, I'm just seeing cowardice. And then the other 50%, I'm seeing defiance. And, a bit like me, I'm saying to people, I'm not changing. The police know where I live. The police have all my details because I've been a public figure now for 4 years. I'm not changing, and if I've got to go to jail, which I don't want to do, then come and get me. But I'm not for changing because I know where this will lead if everybody turns into a coward.
Yeah.
And I'm determined not to be a coward. I'm not a brave man. I'm just not a coward. There's a difference.
Yeah. And that's what's quite chilling, isn't it? Because you and I have actually said outside our bits to camera, you and I have actually said that it is possible some of the things we talk about could be determined now as anti-government rhetoric, incitement to violence, and a policeman could turn up at your door now.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is really chilling, the fact that the things that you and I talk about, which I think are quite, not innocuous, but quite, there's nothing in here that I think is illegal or inappropriate that we're talking about. We're expressing opinions, asking questions. But we're actually now reaching a stage where we're thinking this could end up with the police turning up.
And this is predictable. When you have a regime, a government, an institution that is fearful, they turn to violence and brutality. It's always the last resort. Our governments only have 2 weapons against us. They have lies and they have force. Lies don't work anymore now because we see through, we know it's propaganda. We have X, we have other outlets where we're seeing the truth. Just like the Soviets had the BBC World Service where the news was on.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that people 2 generations ago thought the BBC had the truth on it, and they probably did 50, 60 years ago, but,
yes.
But they haven't now, have they? But that's how they got their truth, and they just went along with what the propaganda they were being told, and they'd nod along to it, but in private they'd go, yeah, I don't believe any of that.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now with state propaganda. So because that doesn't work on us anymore now, they're left with brutality, and that's what they're doing now. If you don't like what we say, we're going to arrest you. If you go on the streets, we'll arrest you. If you do this, we'll destroy your life. We're already making notes on you. We've got a file on you now. We can put stuff on your police record so you won't pass a DBS check. So you won't work for many organisations. This is brutality. And we're already there. Things can get worse, a lot worse than where we are now. But we're already there. We're just in the foothills of it. But there's only one direction at the moment where it's going. And that's because the government's afraid. Politicians are afraid. The elite are afraid because they can see the people stirring and they're going, we have no answers for them because they want us to change everything. And we want to change nothing. So therefore, heavy hand on them.
So I'm going to come back to that, but first of all, I want to talk about the mainstream media. And again, 1984, the view of the mainstream media. Now, in 1984, they talk about the Ministry of Truth. And I think the Ministry of Truth now is what we call the legacy media, the mainstream media. And again, in London, Winston Smith is a member of the Outer Party working in the Ministry of Truth, where he rewrites historical records to conform to the state's ever-changing version of history.
Yeah.
We're seeing that happening now on a daily basis about colonialism, all that kind of stuff is happening. Winston revises past editions of the Times whilst the original documents are destroyed after being dropped into ducts known as memory holes, which lead to an immense furnace. That's happening now, isn't it, as well? We're not only finding our history being erased, being told how crap British people, English people, white people have been in the past, how dreadful we've been, how black people or brown people are actually far more significant in our history than they have been, and that's just, I know that's true. Basically, that is not the case. That the Europeans, the white Europeans, have dominated most of creativity and invention through the Industrial Revolution. But we're also now getting current events being completely tailored, doctored, altered, falsified, like the 100 riots, far-right riots we've told about. It's a great example just 2 weeks ago where that was massively coordinated across the media, a complete falsehood, where the media basically worked together to give a story that was untrue, to incite the public and to bring out the communists basically to take to the streets. So that's come true as well about the mainstream media.
And also during post-COVID,
Yes.
how many politicians and people say, I was never for the lockdowns, I was never for this, I never said that if you took the vaccine it was 100%. And then you go on X and you see a video of them 4 years ago going, these vaccines are amazing, you take one shot and you... So these people are lying all the time, and what's happened is all politicians realise if you say a lie often enough, it becomes the truth.
Yeah, yeah. But the difference is now, the very thing that is acting as a surveillance for the state is also where we can see the truth.
Yes.
Which is X basically at the moment.
X.
Because, I'm not sure... I'm not sure YouTube's that bad, because I watch things on YouTube that are fairly controversial and against the government line that haven't been taken off yet. But certainly X, if it wasn't for X, I don't think we'd be seeing a lot of these things. And these lies would gain traction then. But they've been doing it. So
lots of propaganda arms have to allow you to have a belief that they're not propaganda.
Yeah.
So propaganda arms have to feed you some truth and some things that go against the accepted narrative for you to think they're unbiased.
Yeah.
So we've got to be careful of some of the mainstream, especially online stuff, that we think, oh, they're talking about this. Well, they're giving you that, so you think they're an honest player, but they're not.
Yeah. This is something that's now starting to happen as well. We're going to talk about it later. The thought police employ undercover agents who pose as normal citizens and report any person with subversive tendencies. But this bit is more interesting to me. Children are encouraged to report suspicious persons to the government, and some denounce their parents. Citizens are controlled, and the smallest sign of rebellion, even something as small as a suspicious facial expression, can result in immediate arrest and imprisonment. Thus, citizens are compelled to obedience. We're seeing that, but the children bit is starting to happen now. So they're now starting to get the teachers to basically, what's the word? I would say brainwash the children to try and detect far right, what they regard. So what they're talking about now is, and we'll talk about it later, they're now trying to get children to report what they regard as far right activity. So if some other child, or if your parent, if you go home and your mum says, oh, it's uncontrolled immigration's out of control, they're encouraging children to report this now to their teachers.
This isn't new. This is exactly what happened in Soviet Russia. This is exactly what Mao did. Mao was fantastic at getting children to report their parents. From what I remember reading, lots and lots of parents were turned in by their children and executed. Because if you can brainwash children, then children are a lot easier to control and to do your bidding. So again, this is how Orwell foresaw this, because it was already happening.
Yeah, he'd seen this happening in a communist society, and he was saying this is potentially going to happen across the entire world, basically. But you can actually see the creep of this, can't you? Because the law's been passed in Scotland now, hasn't it? This hate crime law. That actually things you're saying, have you heard about this? This is yeah.
I'm not sure. Has it been passed? I don't know.
It's actually been passed. So in Scotland now, if you're at home at your dinner table, or you're with a party with friends at home, and you say, I don't agree with all this uncontrolled immigration, these bloody Muslims are out of control or whatever, they can report you to the police.
Yeah.
And you can be arrested for that statement. Yeah. So that's happening in Scotland now. Yeah. We're now in England saying to the kids, this is how you recognise far right behaviour or whatever, you need to tell us about this, because this needs to be reported to an organisation called Prevent, which you will know about. Again, we'll talk about later. So this is actually happening now, but can people not see this is happening?
Again, in this country, it's been happening for decades. Who were the foot soldiers for the eco-lunatics? Children.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, children come home from school 20 years ago going, Mum, turn that light off, because every time you turn that switch on, it kills a polar bear. So let's recycle, Mum, because we're killing the planet. All these ideologies, they use children first because, A, we love our children.
Yeah.
Children come across as innocents. They have no hidden agenda. So these far left organisations and regimes always use children. There's photos, loads of photos of Hitler, of Mao, always with beautiful little children sat on their knees, because you use children for that public image, propaganda, and to get your message into the wider community. These aren't new ideas.
But I suppose the difference there is they were indoctrinating kids at school to go home and say things to the parents. They're now saying to the kids, you need to tell us if you hear any.
Yeah.
This is what Yvette Cooper is now talking about. They're now encouraging children to report. And it's only a small step to them kids reporting their parents, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And now we know you can put a Facebook post on and end up in jail. But I'm not sure people. Are you guys actually seeing this? You know, are people actually seeing what's happening here?
They are. This is the calm before the storm. So people didn't expect this reaction from Starmer in the government. It's taken everyone aback a little. People are rightly scared. And people are mulling it over, but everyone can see it. And I don't know if I've said to this before, there's a great quote in Star Wars when Princess Leia is talking to General Aquino. It was Darth Vader's boss, basically. Darth Vader.
You were a big Star Wars.
Oh, I'm a big. The early ones, all the new stuff's crap.
Yeah.
And she says to...
Careful, you'll be arrested for that opinion soon.
Well, yeah. The women and feminists have ruined Star Wars. But she says about the Empire, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. And that's what's happening now. They're tightening their grip and they think it's working, but more and more people are slipping through their fingers and rebelling. And it's just going to take time. It'll take time.
It'll take time, and also a mechanism to rebel without being arrested for a Facebook post or whatever, because this is
people will have to be arrested. People will have to sacrifice themselves. I've been saying the last couple of weeks now online, we need some police officers to ruin their careers and stand up in front of the press in uniform and saying, I'm not obeying these orders because I think they're illegal and I think they're anti-English, anti-British, against the law, and I'm not obeying these. And if I'm fired now for that, then I'm fired for that.
Do you think that will happen?
It may do, depending on how bad things get. But I keep saying to people, if you're waiting for an opportunity to fight for your country that's risk-free, it just means you're never going to fight for your country. So people, you're going to have to accept some consequences. Some of us are going to have to be arrested. Some of us will go to jail. Some of us will ruin our careers. I've already ruined my career through speaking out.
Yeah.
So, but this is what's going to have to happen. We can't be an evil empire, but with nice words and no consequences. Freedom, we only have freedom isn't free. Freedom is paid for by the blood of patriots.
I'll read the last bit of this kind of synopsis of 1984. Winston and Julia read parts of Goldstein, but he's the architect of the party, which explains how the party maintains power, the true meanings of its slogans, and the concept of perpetual war. The perpetual war being the perpetual war that's been waged against us, the citizens at the moment. It argues that the party can be overthrown if proles rise up against it. And that's what you believe, isn't it?
Yeah. And I've said many times on this podcast, not only overthrown, but easily overthrown. Eastern Europe fell overnight.
Yeah.
Lots of regimes fall overnight. And a month before, the CIA would say to themselves, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And the CIA don't even see it happening.
Yeah.
Because all it takes is the public to realise we have the power and we have the numbers and we have the strength.
Yeah.
Once they're convinced of that, every regime falls overnight because you cannot control so many million people. You just can't.
I mean, my belief is now that, and you might laugh at this, Nick, but my belief, I've been thinking about this a lot, I think we're basically living in a communist society now.
We have done for decades. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you do accept it. I think we're living in a communist society where it's a totalitarian state where we are being controlled very, very, and that control, that screw has tightened dramatically since Labour took power. But I think you're right, it's been there all the time. It's just we haven't maybe seen it as visible. And we have to, we now have a situation, we've discussed about this before, we vote in elections for things to happen, and our wishes are ignored, the voters are ignored, so the voters now know their votes are worthless, basically. And the only thing to do, we have to overthrow the government, to overthrow this ruling class, basically. We have to, if we're going to get away from this society, this communist society.
Yeah, it's not just overthrowing the government, because you can replace the government tomorrow. We're just going to replace them with the same idiots we've got now, because they're all the same.
Yeah.
It's about overthrowing the political elite, which is a big part of the civil service. It's a big part of these huge organisations that are not elected but have so much power, like the BBC, like the Arts Council. All these NGOs all have power, soft power, but no one voted them in. They need overthrowing, and we need a government on our side to do that. I think since the Second World War, we've become a more and more socialist country. We had a hiccup with Thatcher, but then since Thatcher, everyone else has been a socialist after that. We have bigger states, we have more taxes, the government does more and more for us, they do it really poorly. Everyone looks to the state now for handouts, for support, for advice. This is a socialist country. We live in a socialist country in the UK, and it's plain to see. Starmer wants the next step, which is communism.
Yeah, I think we're partly down that road.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. I think Lenin said communism is the first step to communism.
I want to move on now from 1984 into a section I'm calling Jailed for Nothing. And I want to read a list of people, of what they've done and then what happened to them. And I don't know if you'll be shocked by this. I'm sure you've read a lot of this, but I just want to go through this. So I'm saying jailed for nothing here. Richard Williams, a 34-year-old man, a Facebook post about, I don't even know what it was. I've got the detail. Jailed for 3 months. Actually put in jail for 3 months for the Facebook post. Lee Dunst, a 51-year-old man, Facebook post, jailed for 8 weeks. Billy Thorpe, 31-year-old father, Facebook posted some emojis, basically, some, about immigrants or whatever, jailed for 12 weeks. Julie Sweeney, you'll have heard of this lady. She posted a Facebook post, something along the lines of, you need to go and burn the mosque or something like that. No previous criminal... By the way, none of these have got previous criminal records, these people. No previous criminal records. A woman, a carer for her husband. Facebook post, jailed for 15 months. Jordan Parler, 28, Facebook post, again, supposedly 20 months. David Spring, a 62-year-old man, and there's a video of this guy who went to a protest in London. He was shouting at the police. He didn't commit any violence or anything. He was shouting at the police. I think he may be the one who shouted, "You're not English anymore," to the police. Jailed for 18 months. A gay couple, I don't know if you heard about this, I think they were making fun of the policeman's horses or something. Jailed, I don't know how long for. Guy Harkness, a soldier who served, for his country, was at a protest. Again, no violence or something like pushing over, but jailed for 12 months. And then Thomas Whitehouse, and this is quite an interesting one which I mentioned to you. He was either at a riot or not a riot but a protest. Then he was recognised. He'd gone on holiday. He flew back. The police were waiting. So he hadn't hurt anybody, by the way. Not hurt anybody, not attacked anybody. He was involved in a riot. He flew back, went on holiday. So this is a normal guy. I went to the protest in Manchester and I was there. He went to a protest, went on holiday with his family, came back. He was arrested as he came off the plane and they published his name and address on the police website, and then he was jailed for, I don't know, 10 months or something like that. So as I go down that list there, what are your thoughts on those people and what's happened to them? Is that an equitable thing that's happened?
No. We need to differentiate between people who were caught up in the riots and broke windows, attacked people, threw bricks at police. They need potentially jail time. Not got a problem with that. People who are posting offensive things online, like the woman who said burn down the migrant hotels, shouldn't have said that. Classed as incitement to riot, incitement to murder. I get that. But we need to take into account that it's online. She needs prosecuting. But nowhere in a million years in this country would she get a custodial sentence for that, up to a couple of months ago. Some of the others was a guy who was arrested and sent to jail, maybe one of those guys, for screaming at a police dog.
Yes, that's not one of those, but yeah, that's what happened.
So it's gone mental. And the reason why this is happening is, I'll go back to what I said before. The government and the elite are scared. They've seen uncontrolled violence on the streets. They've seen the anger of the normal people. They've seen demonstrations. Hence why they've classed it all as violent. They've classed it all as far right, even though there was some violent thugs there. Of course there was. But they've had to clamp down on this because they're afraid. Because if we let this get out of hand, we'll be gone soon. If this starts all over the country, we need to clamp down on this now, hard, and send the message. And they would rather let criminals out of jail, rapists, who are not being sent to jail at the moment. They'll just let a guy out of jail who was involved in a machete attack that killed someone.
Yeah.
And they're quite happy letting criminals out of jail, dangerous criminals out of jail, because those dangerous criminals are not a danger to the government and to the elite. They don't care about them. But a shouty man on the street corner who is educating other white Englishmen on street corners, who looks like he could be helping build momentum and change in the country. Mr. Shouty is dangerous to our government. We need to come down on Mr. Shouty. And that's exactly what this is. You could class nearly all those people you mentioned there as political dissidents.
Yeah.
That's what they are. Other countries do this. And we shame them and say, Iran shouldn't be doing this, China shouldn't be doing that. We're now sending people to jail for Facebook posts. Because the government is as afraid of its people as Iran is scared of their people, as China is scared of their people. Wait, this is just a playbook.
And I think that's a really good point, because I regard these people as political prisoners. Yeah. I think they are people who have expressed disagreeing with the government. They've expressed disagreeing with the government, its policies effectively, manifested in different ways, but that's what they're doing. And as a result of that, they've been arrested and thrown in jail as political prisoners. There's no difference to me as what happened in Hong Kong when the protesters originally protested again. They were jailed again for being involved in riots, but actually they were protesting against the Chinese government when it took over Hong Kong. Yeah. There's no difference to this, as I could see. But the shocking thing is, 1,000 people have been arrested in this process. 1,000 people. And those people, if they are then sent to jail, in my view, are political prisoners. But I guess the thing I'm surprised at, and I've gone down this list, and it's clearly, I didn't really have to ask you the question, because it's clearly clear this is totally inappropriate, this reaction from the government or whatever. But I'm not hearing many voices saying this is outrageous, we need to free these people. Are you hearing this, or am I missing this?
I'm hearing some of it online, Free Speech Union and the usual voices. I'm hearing them talking about this new culture for them. But anybody connected to the elite isn't, because they want the status quo. They make their living, they've got a comfortable life with the status quo. Why would they want to rock the boat? They may not agree with this, but they can understand that the government is trying to maintain the status quo. And then you've got the average person on the street. Like I said to you, half of them have now shown themselves to be cowards, which was always going to be the case, and they're being quiet now and behaving just like the government want them to do. And then there's a percentage of people who are not shutting up, who are still speaking. So it doesn't surprise me what's happened, and it doesn't surprise me the reaction, because even people who think they're freedom fighters and think they're heroes, it's easy to think that until it happens and there's consequences. And now you're going, do I want to lose my job as a solicitor? I could get disbarred. That's me done. I'm a doctor. If my bosses find out I criticised any of this, then the NHS could strike me off. The nurses union have just put a statement out saying that the nurses union now are stating they do not want to treat racists. So if nurses can say we refuse to treat racists, and you work as a nurse or a doctor, you know if you say the wrong thing, you're struck off, you're gone. That's your career gone. So, but that's what fear does. Fear makes people kowtow, but it only ever lasts a certain amount of time.
But I think that's what's frightening, because we know, for example, when the Rwanda idea of shipping Rwandan immigrants, when there were loads of immigration lawyers, human rights lawyers, turned up to overturn this. Where are these people for the 1,000 who've been jailed or been arrested?
They're exactly where you imagine would be. They're on the communist marches. They're the people in the amnesty vests clapping that we're going to slit the throats of white scum racists. So these people have an agenda. So these people are not there to protect human rights for all. They're only there to protect human rights for the people we agree with.
No, and I see that, but what I'm saying is, where's their equivalent then? Where are the people? There must be lawyers, criminal lawyers, human rights lawyers in this country who are seeing what's happened to these people. Because I'm not seeing it, Nick. I'm genuinely not seeing it. Who will say, hang on a minute, this isn't right. We're going to start a mass action here and get these people out of jail. Where are they?
Cowards. Because they know if they do that, there's a very good chance they're going to be disbarred.
But that's frightening as well then, isn't it? It means it's working.
Well, absolutely working. Yeah, up to a certain point. I know a solicitor, a lawyer, barrister. I chatted to him a few years ago. He was a nice guy. He got kicked out of his practice. All the other partners voted him out and kicked him out because he used a phrase online, stroppy black girl. And he was talking about some girl who took a school to court and won her case because they wanted her to comb her hair down because she had a big afro, 18 inches afro. Kids behind her couldn't see the teacher. So he called her a stroppy black girl, and lost his career.
I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
Well, I know what the answer is. It's called courage.
Right.
I wrote a book on it. My first book is called Lessons in Courage. Yeah. And that's what this is about. It's about you've got to make a stand, because when are you going to make a stand? Is it when they come for your neighbours? Is it when they come for your cousins?
Yeah.
Is it when they come for you? When do you make a stand? Because the longer you leave it, the harder the fight's going to be. So we've all got to ask ourselves, when do we make a fight? Is it when they're killing the Jews? Is it when they're killing the homosexuals? I don't know when the answer is, but it's cowardice. And we're all prone to cowardice. And the only antidote to cowardice is courage.
But I think part of the problem is the apparatus that the government are employing is so strong, so powerful, so insipid and insidious within everything they're doing. It's very hard for people to actually start to collaborate, to work together, to start to put structures together to do this, because they have scattered everybody, haven't they, with this process?
If it was easy to do, we wouldn't need to do it.
Yes.
It would have been done.
Yeah.
And we think this is a hard time at the moment. But do you think we're living in a hard time to change this country and change our elite and our government compared to Nelson Mandela, who had the harder time?
Yeah.
Compared to Gandhi?
Yeah.
Who had the harder time?
I'm not a fan of Gandhi.
No, but he beat the British Empire.
Yes, he did actually.
Compared to Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
There's been people compared to Joan of Arc. So just because it's hard now, It's still possible, and it's very easily possible. We just need to look at people who are in worse situations, with less resources, with less support, and they change the world.
Yeah.
I'm tired of people online telling me it's over, telling me England's done.
Yeah.
There's no point trying.
Yeah.
And I say to them, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Your cowardice is part of the problem, because if you weren't such a coward and you stood up and said things, that would encourage other people to stand up and say things.
Yeah.
And the government then would hear 60 million people saying things, and that will terrify the bejesus out of them.
Yeah. And that courage, we've talked about this before, doesn't it? Courage comes from a leader, from a person that says things that people listen to. And we've talked about Tony Robinson, about Nigel Farage. You don't think those are the particular people. But there must come a point where somebody emerges who everybody listens to, who says this person makes sense, and actually we're going to say that as well. You know, and I think that's what we need to do. And I always think part of what we're doing here, we're saying these things, and I hope people listening and feeling more courageous about saying things themselves.
Well, that's number one comment I get online now. And I've never had this before, up to a couple of months, never had it. Thanks for that video, Nick. It's made me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm not as downhearted now that I've heard you discuss it, or
Yeah.
your point of view on this, or your optimism on that. Thank you. I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
That's a win.
It is a win. So I think the government have done this now. We've just given a list of people who've been jailed for nothing, basically. Political prisoners, in our opinion, or in my opinion. But the government, despite that, are now doubling down again. So Yvette Cooper, she pledges to crack down on harmful and hateful beliefs. So this is the latest thing. So they've already cracked down on what I regard as genuinely innocent people.
And do you know what she means by harmful and hateful?
Well, I was going to ask you if you...
It means whatever I say is harmful and hateful.
Yes.
And I can change it every day at any minute, in any context, and that then becomes harmful and hateful. And if I want to change my mind next week, I'll change it again.
Yeah. And
That's
I think
what that means.
I've read some comments on this, which I want to kind of talk about now. And it's exactly the point you've made there. And I've no doubt that in the eyes of Cooper's Home Office, undermining democracy. So this is what they're talking about now. They want to crack down on people who are undermining democracy. Is when a couple of thousand far-right oafs gather in Whitehall, not when 100,000 nice people from leafy suburbs march to say stop Brexit. So if you're marching to say stop Brexit, that's not undermining democracy. If you're going to Whitehall and say we need to stop uncontrolled immigration, that is undermining democracy. It's a short step from countering extremism to countering ideas that the government dislikes while signal boosting ideas it does. Whatever their lofty social promises, crusades against problematic speech have a terrible tendency to empower official narratives at the expense of dissenting ones. And that's your point, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The belief, if it's not categorised by law or anything else, a belief or a hateful harm is purely subjective. And that's where the government are now going.
They've been going this way for a long time. There's got many laws on the books that's open to interpretation. That's what hate crime is. We've got hate crime laws already.
Yeah.
This is just a stiffening up of those laws, and it's all down to perspective, and it's all down to personal opinion. We've got hate crime laws in this country at the moment that you don't have to be the victim of the hate crime law. All you have to do is, in this law, in our country now, if you see a crime as an innocent bystander and you perceive that crime was committed because of hate, as an innocent bystander, you can report that as a hate crime. So you're not a victim of it, you're not the perpetrator, you're not the offender, but yet you can deem that a hate crime, report it, and it gets logged as a hate crime. We have places throughout all our cities now that are not police stations that you can go to and report a hate crime that gets logged by a civilian. It can be an LGBT centre, it can be a library, and the librarian will take your report, and then that then is logged by the police as a hate crime. They may not investigate it, so not hate crime, hate incident, But that all then goes into the stats. So all this feeds the narrative that we have a problem with hate in our country. But when you have a hate reporting centre on every street corner, don't be surprised when people are reporting hate.
But the problem we've got here is, whereas the hate legislation is defined as a number of categories, wasn't it, like religion, race, or whatever. What Yvette Cooper's now, where this government's now heading is, they will decide what is hateful, what is undermining democracy, what's a harmful belief, basically. So suddenly it goes from being something that's almost prescribed, and even that wasn't done very well. That came out of Stephen Lawrence, didn't it?
Yeah.
Even that wasn't done very well. We're going to go from that to something far more general, determined by the government, by the authorities, by quangos, whoever it might be, as being a harmful or a hateful belief. That's where we're heading.
Exactly. And do you know how we got hate crimes in the first place? This is how nebulous it is. So there's a theory, an academic theory, about hate crime and genocide. So we have hate crime laws because it stops genocide. Because to get to genocide, it starts with somebody not liking someone, someone persecuting someone, someone hating someone, someone then hitting someone, someone stabbing someone, someone killing someone. The next stage after that is someone killing all of them. That's the line of an individual to genocide. And hate crime laws are put on the statute in this country to stop it at source one. If you stop people hating, we'll never get to genocide. Does that make any sense to you?
No. Again, another quote here. Ask yourself, what is a harmful belief? And more to the point, who gets to decide, which is what we just talked about. It's a mere 3 years since Starmer thundered that it's not right to say only women have a cervix. That's what he said 3 years ago. This is something that shouldn't be said, he said, after one of his MPs, Rosie Duffield, I think you know Rosie Duffield, committed the very blasphemy of stating basic biological facts. Are we seriously expected to trust a government led by this man to rule on what a harmful belief is and what is an okay belief? Given he once thought basic biology was something that shouldn't be said, who knows what perfectly normal, scientifically correct belief he might rebrand as harmful in the future. And this is a really interesting point, isn't it? Because this is a man who said that men can have a cervix. So he's basically...
He said 99.9% of women can have a penis.
Yes.
Sorry.
99% of women don't have a penis.
Don't have a penis, yeah.
But basically saying, so some
women have penises.
Some women have penises.
I must be a woman.
Yeah. So this is a man who basically lies about a biological, scientific fact. His brain is such that he's prepared to accept that a woman can have a penis.
He's a liar or he's a fool?
Yes, he's a liar. It doesn't really matter. He's in charge of the country.
Yeah.
He's a liar or he's a fool. So he is now going to decide arbitrarily what is harmful, a harmful belief. A man who doesn't even understand the basics of biology. That's what you've got here.
Everything is potentially harmful.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah.
So, we have issues. We have a knife crime issue in this country. I could kill someone with a spoon.
Yeah.
If I went for them with a spoon.
Yeah.
Do we ban spoons?
Yes.
There's lots of things that are, we look at some religions, look at Christianity, Islam, we look at other ideologies. You'll find something harmful everywhere you look. And that's acceptable. If you're a free person living in a free society, you have to accept risk. Because if you don't accept risk, that means you give that power to reduce the risk over to someone else.
Yeah.
And they get to control everything to reduce that risk.
Yeah.
You're then not a free person
in
a free country. And because of this pink and fluffy, we've got to protect everybody all the time. That's why we're in this situation. A lot of it started out of the health and safety from the 70s onwards.
Yeah.
About controlling people, but saying to them, I'm doing it for your benefits. I'm doing this for your... I'm going to take these rights away from you because then I can protect you for this.
Yeah.
That's what happened at COVID. We're going to protect you.
Yeah.
But to protect you, I've got to take these rights away from you.
Yeah.
And many people will accept it.
But COVID's another example, isn't it? COVID is basically a belief system that they determined was harmful. They said, we've decided this is harmful. The facts didn't actually...
Didn't come into it.
They
get in the way sometimes, facts.
Yeah. So the facts of COVID, they affected a tiny percentage of the population, would kill a tiny... But the government, this is just globally, this is not, decided it was harmful. And then they imposed on that legislation to stop people from living their lives. And it says here, just what you've been saying here, entire belief systems can be reimagined as harmful. Traditional Catholics, for example, they think a marriage should only be between a man and a woman. They think that sex is determined by God, not a scalpel-wielding gender surgeon, and that only followers of Christ get to heaven. So that's homophobic, transphobic, and Islamophobic. Yeah? Harmful. Shut them down. That's where we're getting to. We're actually saying Catholics, by the ideology of a Catholic, a traditional Catholic, a true Catholic, is basically harmful.
Yeah, and we've been saying that, people have been saying that for quite a long time, because to a certain extent they're correct. But as a free person in a free society, the only interference I think we should have in your life, the main one, is for you not to physically harm others. Not to stop you mentally harming others or upsetting others or to making people cry, but physically harming people.
Yes.
That's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
So I don't think you should have the right to murder. I don't think you should have the right to assault people. Yeah. But I think you should have the right to say to someone, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Or you're a tranny.
Yeah.
Or you're mental.
Yeah.
And that might really, really upset someone. And I can understand it being really upsetting to someone.
Yeah.
But I don't draw the line there.
Yeah.
It has to be physical violence.
I think we should have the right to offend somebody, shouldn't we? We should have the right to offend somebody. I don't mind people offending me as long as I have the right to offend them too. But the things you described there, violence and murder, those are already protected by law, aren't they? I can't attack you, I can't kill you. I mean, I can, but I'll be arrested or it will be a crime. So there's already structures in place to protect society from that. Everything else, I think...
We are, but they're being chipped away because now it's legitimate defence now for you to attack someone and claim they were racist towards me. And that's mitigating circumstances.
Is it?
Yeah.
When's that coming out? I've not heard about that.
No, these, I'm not saying that's on the statute books per se, but these are mitigating circumstances now that you can use in court. So if you say I'm a victim of a hate crime, I can attack you and I can claim self-defence because you are already attacking me with words. Now, I'm not saying that's a get out of jail card. I'm just saying they're mitigating circumstances which will reduce your sentence, reduce how much blame is put on you in a court of law.
I think unless the law has changed, my understanding is that you can't attack somebody unless they're attacking you first, physically attacking you first.
No, you can claim self-defence if you hit first.
Yes. If you think somebody's... So if you came towards me with a look of intent, and then I can hit you then, if you're coming towards me, as long as I can evidence that later in some way, shape or form. Yeah, I can get that. That's self-defence.
Yeah.
But are you saying that you can hit somebody if they're being racist to you? I don't think...
No, I'm not saying legally you can. I'm just saying when it gets to court for assault, the judge will take into account that someone said hurty words to you, and therefore we don't think you're 100% responsible now. We probably think you're 50% responsible. Say we're going to sentence you to 9 months in jail. We're going to give you 3 months in jail. So we're getting to that stage where the next stage from that will be legal to do that, as opposed to at the moment it's a great excuse to get you sentenced.
So you're predicting what might happen?
Yeah,
maybe. If we move on now from that, and we I think we've agreed, you and I agree, we're seeing this infringement of our rights, our civil liberties. We're seeing now this hate legislation coming on board, which is basically designed to stop people protesting against the government, undermining democracy, as the so-called communist fascists are saying to us. But there has been a reaction from around the world to this. I don't know if you're aware.
So a little bit. I didn't realise.
Yeah. So I'm kind of saying that this is a question for you, and the question, I'll give you examples of what people are saying, but the question I would ask is, why isn't Starmer listening to the room here? Because he's getting people saying to him what he's doing is wrong, but he doesn't appear to be reacting. So Matteo Salvini, who is the, just let me get my notes here, who is the
Italian.
He's the Deputy Prime Minister of Italy.
Yeah.
So Matteo Salvini has said, this is not how you should be treating your own people.
Mm.
Like, guys, that's from another country's leader, basically. So he's saying, this is not how you should be treating your own people. Javier Milei, the president of, I might pronounce his name wrong, of Argentina, he said, whilst other countries propose censorship, we propose freedom of expression. Just look at what is happening in England since the socialists came to power. They are putting people in jail for posting on social networks. So that's the president of Argentina.
Yep.
I mean, Argentina, is not known as one of the most sort of democratic or liberal. I mean, he's an exceptional guy, so he's making a big difference. Trump, I think, has commented. I can't remember what. I know he's made a couple of comments out there. Christine Anderson, a German MEP, said, Keir Starmer, I'm calling you out on being a disgrace to any democracy. That's what she said. What's she called? Priti Patel.
Yeah.
She called on Keir Starmer to recall Parliament because of the protests and was ignored. Jeremy Clarkson. He has basically banned.
I saw that.
Banned Keir Starmer from his pub and said, because of the complete shambles you've made of the government since the beginning. And I think one of the most telling things is the Labour membership. So the Labour membership has gone down, let me just get this fact right, has gone down since he came to power. Apologies for this. The Labour membership has fallen. His favourability has dropped to zero. More than half of British people believe that he's heading in the wrong direction. But I did have a stat on the Labour membership. The Labour membership, since he's come to power, has dropped dramatically, basically. So he's getting all these signals from all over the place, including internationally, the country's leaders, and he's not reacted at all. Why would that be?
Many reasons.
Because how often does that happen? That
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. So let's look at the international politicians. The Italians will take great pleasure criticising the UK government because we've spent decades criticising them and their regimes. Argentina politician, he'll just get brownie points for that, having a go at the English after the Falklands and stuff like that.
True.
So listening to these politicians, this is just a game of politics. They're doing it more for their own home audience than trying to be democratic leaders for freedom. Keir Starmer, like most politicians, and we've had this conversation many times, he has no other options. I'm sure he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing. I'm sure he'd rather be treated like Blair in his first few years, being Mr. Wonderful, but he knows he isn't. He knows he's inherited a different situation, and he knows he just has to get on with it, and he thinks what he's doing is right for the country. Just like Hitler, Stalin, Idi Amin all thought they were doing the right thing for their country, and I honestly believe they thought that. And that's what he's doing. So he'll take no notice of any of them. He's got his advisors, his close circle, are all telling him this is working, it's going well. Half the population think we should clamp down on the riots. The other half are not sure, so don't worry about that. Don't worry about the polls. Polls go down all the time, So he's got this echo chamber telling him all the time.
But do you think he really believes that? Do you think he's looking at it and saying, yeah, I'm doing all the right things here? I mean, you said when this first happened, and I think you're right, there's a playbook, isn't there, for the governments? And it's like, if there's a riot, then you just clamp down hard and everything goes quiet. Yeah. But I think you and I agree that this time that doesn't work, that playbook, that particular play. And he must be seeing the reaction from...
Well, it's working at the moment, so... Look at it through his eyes. There's no more riots.
Yeah.
There's no more demonstrations. People online are saying, I'm scared, I'm not posting anything about the government anymore now. That's a win.
Do you think he's aware of that?
He
must be aware.
He will, yeah. People will be saying the online stuff's working. People are scared now to post hate. Oh, that's great. The other elites are all sticking up for him. All the other organisations are sticking up for him. There's no, apart from reform, there's no one out there challenging him and his authority. He's looking at this going, I'm going to take a beating in the polls for a month or two, but I'm here for 5 years. If I can be not unpleasant, if I can be unpopular now, like Thatcher was in the first few years, she only won her second term because of the Falklands War. She got a bounce because of that. She'd have got kicked out if it wasn't for that. So he's planning long term. Decent politicians can't be looking at polls every day because you get nothing done. So he's thinking, everyone will forget about this. I just don't think they will.
Yeah.
And the reason why the Labour membership is collapsing is not because he's been in power for 50 days. This has been collapsing since he took over. And that's because Corbyn sold the dream. And these people are leaving Labour now are the proper communist socialists. So they don't think Starmer's left-wing enough. That's why they're leaving. And again, him cancelling the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. I didn't see that coming at all. I didn't see that coming at all. So that's why those numbers are going down.
And how scared do you think the government is? I've got a quote here. What truly petrifies this government, and I don't know if you, based on what you said, I don't know if you think this, what truly petrifies this government is mounting public awareness of the demonstrable link between mass uncontrolled immigration and the increasingly dangerous state of our streets. Day in and day out, the horrors just keep coming. Of course, the random stabbings are not all, or even committed by most who've come to this country. The appalling Nottingham attacks being a case in point, but quite a few are, and the voters deserve to know. A strong and stable government, confident in its ability to turn public opinion in its favour via the power of argument, would not be incarcerating commentators, especially those like Spotforth. I don't know who Spotforth is, who made be one of the people who posted on Facebook, who made a foolish but fleeting mistake in relation to a matter of overwhelming public interest. Starmer's behaviour is the political equivalent of pressing the panic button. Like my own device, it's best left for genuine emergencies. Do you think that's right?
It is. But this is the playbook. And if I was him, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. Because it's always worked up to now. Those 3 girls got stabbed. That was the catalyst to kick a lot of this off. But he's thinking to himself, but is this the real start of change? And he's probably thinking, no. Nobody got upset when 100,000 white working class girls got gang rapes. If they can put up with that, they can put up with this. Something horrendous has to happen before they'll really do something about it. These are just yobs on the streets shouting, throwing bricks, and I've come down hard and they've all gone home. Good days, carry on. That's exactly what they're all thinking. And to a certain extent, and so they should.
And this article here, which I can't remember where I got it from, but it actually echoes, I think, the things you've just been saying. Kier Starmer is prioritising the jailing of white British people who shout, I don't know if you wrote this actually, who shout anti-establishment slogans on the streets or post online. It makes sense. Rapists, murderers and violent criminals are no threat to Starmer and his ilk. But a man shouting on the street is for others may listen to the message and agree. Then you have two men shouting on the streets and growing on numbers. A government has only 2 weapons to control the people: lies and force. The propaganda does not work any longer. This is what you're saying.
Yeah, I wrote this.
You wrote this?
Yeah.
This is really good.
It's one of my articles. Yeah.
This is really good. The propaganda does not work any longer, so we must expect to see more state-sanctioned brutality. The more force they use against us, the more we know that they are losing their power and grip on us. We are winning. It just doesn't feel like that at the moment. Did you write that?
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. And I think that's the point, isn't it? He is prioritising jailing white British people because they're the threat to him at the moment. Forget the rapists and the murderers and the guys raping girls in Rochdale.
They don't affect him in
They're not any threat to him at the moment, are they? So he's jailing
shouty men,
or little old ladies who post something on Facebook.
Yeah, because they're the danger.
So it's kind of. So he must be aware then. In that case, he must be aware it's happening. Just want to move on to the last bit of kind of this session, because actually we've been going an hour, I didn't realise. And we've been seeing a lot about, you and I have our opinions about what I call uncontrolled immigration. So I don't talk about illegal immigration or mass immigration. I talk about uncontrolled immigration. So I class that as a combination of people who are legal immigrants and a combination of people who are coming over on the boats as well. To me, they're one big mass.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not one over the other.
Same thing. But the question I wanted to ask was, how badly is uncontrolled immigration affecting us really? Are you and I just kind of seduced into thinking it's bad because that's what we're interested in and that's what we are concerned? So I came across an article in the Daily Mail, which I know it may not be the most salubrious or vested papers, and it's a map of the UK, and it's 75 crimes have taken place across the UK, in the past few years, all by immigrants, basically. And then accompanying this map is a list of what all these people have been doing. And some of the crimes are quite horrific. Syrian brothers Omar and Mohammed Baredin jailed in March this year for multiple counts of rape, including that of a 13-year-old girl. Shahin Davish Narbodjan, 34, from Iran, stabbed Brenda Blaney, 87, to death at her home in North Yorkshire. Blaney had allowed him to live with her and referred to him as her grandson. I'm just reading these in sequence, by the way. I'm not. Sudanese Mohammed Noor Ibrahim, 39, jailed for the disgusting sexual assault of a 16-year-old girl in Hull in 2022. Eritrean Philmon Telki, 29, raped a woman in Leeds in 2018. He was jailed for more than 6 years. Quite a few of these, by the way, as you go down the list, have not been caught, are still out there, or have been subsequently released and are still within the country. So somebody's done the work here, and they've found 75 serious crimes carried out by immigrants, first-generation immigrants to this country. So this is happening. This crime, the problems that arise with uncontrolled immigration into this country are happening, aren't they? It's not a myth. I've got a whole bunch of other things, articles as well, of people that have been doing this. So are we, I don't know if you know the stats, but are we imagining that there is a problem with this uncontrolled immigration, or is this...
No. So our eyes and ears tell us about migrant crime just by watching TV, just by looking online who's being arrested. They're always brown skin and they're always foreign names, and most of them says immigrant. So we know what's happening, even though we're told it's not true. We see it with our eyes. But let's just say crime was the only issue mass migration is causing for the country. If it was just crime, do you know what? There's a very good chance we could deal with this. Very good chance we could get a grip on this and sort it out if it was just crime. But crime isn't probably not even in my top 3 of what's killing the country through mass immigration. It's everything else that's killing the country. These crimes are not killing the country, they're just killing individuals and killing families and destroying lives. They're not killing the country. So let's look at mass immigration and let's look at the housing crisis. The reason why houses are so expensive and rents are so expensive is because we've let 10 million people in the country in a decade, and every one of them needs housing, and people who are born and raised here can't afford housing, can't afford rent. And then you think, well, that's bad enough. And but then you think to yourself, why aren't the indigenous population not breeding? Well, how do you breed when your life's insecure? You can't get a family house with a garden, so therefore you're putting off having children. Or you might have a child, but then you think to yourself, well, I'm only having the one because everything else isn't working out for me. And why is it not working out for you? Well, you've got a poor paid job. Why do you have a poor paid job? Mass immigration. Because that job is only on minimum wage. We created minimum wage because of mass immigration. And what I mean by that is the normal market forces in our country for wages were negatively affected by having an oversupply of cheap labour. So businesses don't have to pay you a decent wage, because if you don't want it as a British guy, there's 14 Afghans down the road and they'll take the job for less money and that will pay them. So that's keeping wages low. Again, how do you have a family? How do you buy a house? How do you raise your children when you're on crap wages? All these things are connected. So then let's look at public services. Let's not talk about the criminal justice system and how that's at breaking point because all criminals are imported. But how do you get your kid in school? And let's say you get a kid into a school. In their primary school, they're in a class now of 30 kids. Half of them don't speak English as their first language. So all that money and resources of the school is being privatised on those 15 kids, trying to get them to learn English. So your kid's now neglected. Your kid might not be academically gifted, but we don't spend any time with your kid because we're trying to get all these kids to speak English. You want doctors and dentists, not in this area, mate, we're all full. You can't get a dentist. I couldn't get a dentist for 3 years and paid in the system all my life. You're looking at all these things. This is what's killing the country, and it all comes back to mass immigration. And I don't for one moment blame the immigrants for this. I blame our politicians who allow mass immigration.
Yeah. Well, I think the clue's in the name. When we say, what am I opposed to? I'm opposed to uncontrolled immigration. The immigrants are the ones that are not controlled. It's the government that's not controlling them, basically. It's not you're right. It's not the issue of the immigrants. They've been given the opportunity to come here and do what in all ways, shape, and form, and they're coming here, aren't they? Basically, the fact that it's uncontrolled in that a lot of them come over on the boats and we don't know who they are, and I suspect a lot of the people who commit some of these crimes may have come over that way. Yeah. But
they're more likely to be the criminals.
Yeah, they're more likely to be the criminals. Of course, there's a logic to that, but. It's the fact it's uncontrolled. It's not the immigrants' fault themselves. It's the fact that they're being allowed to come here without any control from the government. Yeah.
It took my niece 2 years to get on a nursing course, and we're short of nurses. Why? Because the government only funds so many nursing courses because it's expensive. They would rather go across the world and steal nurses from across the world. Same with doctors. All these problems can be fixed if we had a government who planned ahead. If the government said we're recruiting no more foreign nurses and doctors, and if you look at the rates on foreign doctors for incompetence, for malpractice, the sexual assaults, so it's a high percentage of foreign doctors because they don't speak English. They're more likely to make a mistake. They're more likely to sexually abuse the patients. But we keep importing them. We need a 10-year plan to go. In the next 5 to 10 years, we will need no more foreign doctors and nurses in this country. So we then give local people these well-paid jobs and we train them up to do it. But we haven't got politicians who are willing to do the hard work and do it.
Yeah. I want to finish on this one with something from Rod Liddle, and I'd be interested to know whether I think I know your answer before I say it. So I think Rod Liddle has given up. So I suppose the question I'm saying here is, have we given up? The truth is that we are walking towards a grim, dystopic future rather dutifully, marching along without, for the most part, daring to raise our voices in objection. Every person I met in Middlesbrough last week, he's from Middlesbrough, Rod Liddle, lamented the level of immigration, the consequential crime levels, and how they were not allowed to talk about it for fear of being called racist, but not on the record. Douglas, I don't know if it's somebody who referred to, is quite wrong. We are all doing as we are told, and hope not hate has won. So that's his rather grey and miserable view, basically. So he's going out there, Rod Liddle, he's talking to people, they're saying, this is a mess, immigration's out of control. This is in Middlesbrough, it's got quite a high immigrant population, I think. This is a mess, everything's out of control. All the things you just said there, but they're saying it under their breath, off the record, don't quote me on that, or whatever. And he's saying we're submitting to this basically.
But that's been the case for decades. What's happening now is the change is stirring. We're not having change yet, and change will not come from people like Rod Liddle, who I like. You know, he's too educated, he's too middle class. He's going to change nothing. He comments on what he sees. He's not a leader. He's not going to implement change. Change will come from the working class. Change always comes from the working class. But things are moving now. The die's been cast. Change is coming. It's just going to take time. So those people now who are talking to him off the record, won't take long for them then, some of them, to start talking on the record. These conversations we're having, I hope, are giving people courage for them to talk. And once you hit, I think they call it 3.5%, once you hit 3.5% of the population, then that's the breaking point. And if you're going to get change, it's when you hit 3.5%. That's when ideas become mainstream. That's when people start talking about things. And we will hit that. We're just not there yet. We're going through the coward stage at the moment because we're scared of being locked up. But the British, the English people have awoken now, and I can't see how we go back to sleep. And we've been in worse situations. I keep saying to people, in 1939,
Yes.
in 1939, apart from Churchill, the whole of the government wanted to make a deal with Hitler.
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
All of them.
Yeah.
And he said no.
Yeah. One man.
So just because you're intelligent, just because you've got a good job, just because you're in politics, just because you're rich, doesn't mean you know what to do. And it took an old, fat, drunken man called Churchill to have his finest hour. So let's not demonise and let's not give this fight up yet, because we haven't even started fighting yet.
On that very, very positive note, Nick Buckley, MBE, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Nice to see you.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers, I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.